Hello, everyone, and welcome to our program this evening, Facing the Pending Eviction Crisis, a virtual panel and Q&A. My name is Jennifer Robertson. I'm the adult program librarian at the Carbondale Public Library. And this program is being presented by the Carbondale Public Library, Elevate, the Carbondale Branch NAACP, and Carbondale United. So if you have questions that come up this evening, please put them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen or the chat on Zoom. And if you're watching from Facebook, please feel free to put your questions in the comments section. And there will be time for questions after the panel. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our moderator this evening, Dr. Linda Flowers, the president of the Carbondale Branch NAACP. Thank you, Dr. Flowers.
Thank you, Jennifer, and good evening, everyone. I have the task of introducing our panelists to you this evening. They have a wealth of information that we trust is information either you can use or pass on to others who can use the information. Our first panelist is William David Higgs of Elevate, and then we have Brigitta Mac-Rizzo, a life member of the Carbondale NAACP and the executive director of Jackson County Housing Authority. Next, we have Carmalita Cahill, the executive director of the Carbondale Warming Center. And last but certainly not least, Lori Crenshaw Bryant, also a life member of the Carbondale Branch NAACP. Thank you and enjoy.
So our first speaker this evening, our first panelist is William David Higgs, the Community Resources Coordinator of Elevate.
Hi, and thank you very much for that introduction, Jennifer and Dr. Flowers. So I'll go ahead and jump right in. So for my 10 minutes here, I just want to do two things. First, I want to establish a little context for what we're talking about. What we mean when we say the pending eviction crisis and how this relates to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. And then in the second part of my 10-minute presentation, I'm going to talk about some resources specifically related to energy efficiency and relief for energy-related expenses. Energy-related expenses often are a factor that put people behind on rent. And as a result, it is definitely related to evictions for non-payment of rent and mortgage, things like that. So I'll go ahead and get started with the first part of that, and that's to establish some context. So throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, or at least throughout a large chunk of it, there have been some protection at the state or the federal level for renters and homeowners. Currently, there are two moratoria that cover folks here in Illinois. On the one hand, there is a state level moratorium that is the result of an executive order from the governor. And that state level evictions moratorium covers evictions for failure to pay rent. So it's a moratorium or a ceasing of evictions related to non-payment of rent at the state level. And that one expires at the end of this month. However, in addition to that state level moratorium, there is also a federal moratorium that was put out there by the CDC. And the federal moratorium lasts all the way until October 3rd. Now, neither of these two moratoria are blanket evictions moratoria. So there are still reasons why you could be evicted even with these moratoriums in place. For example, if you break some term on your lease, or if you, I think in the language of the Illinois one, they have a provision about posing an immediate danger to persons or property. So if you're, out in an apartment complex, doing something that would endanger other people or endanger the property there, you could still be evicted. But these moratoria both prevent you from being evicted for failing to pay rent. And with both of these moratoria, you have to fill out a form that is provided on the CDC's website. There are certain eligibility requirements you have to meet in either of these moratoria, namely an income eligibility requirement. So you can't make more than, I think it's $99,000 a year for a single person, and whatever 99,000 times 2 is for a couple filing jointly. But as long as you meet that requirement and you are in a county with substantial or high levels of COVID-19 transmission, then you would be covered under these moratoria. So when we talk about the pending eviction crisis, we're talking about the expected spike in evictions that we think we're going to see when these moratoria expire. Right now, the only thing preventing a lot of people from getting evicted is the presence of these moratoria, either at the state or the federal level. There's a lot of people who have fallen behind on rent as a result of the economic stagnation caused by the pandemic. This economic stagnation didn't come out of nowhere. There were economic troubles before the pandemic, and this pandemic just exacerbated them. So a lot of people, especially in communities that were already experiencing housing insecurity and precarity, which some of our other speakers are going to speak to tonight, it just led to an increase in that as a result of the pandemic. So when we think of the pending eviction crisis, it's going to be that spike that happens when these protections wear off. So each of us are going to talk about the evictions crisis, this expected spike in evictions in different ways and from different perspectives. But the way I want to talk about it now for the remaining time I have is from the perspective of energy and energy use. So Southern Illinois has a very large amount or high level of energy insecurity, which refers to a household's inability to cover its energy costs while also covering other essential costs such as rent or housing or food. Sometimes we refer to this as the heat or eat dilemma. People who experience some kind of financial hardship sometimes find themselves having to make the decision to either pay the electric bill or get groceries, pay the electric bill or pay rent, heat or eat, heat or have a roof over your head at all. And that scenario, when you are unable to properly pay for those energy expenses while also covering your other bills, is called energy insecurity. However, there are resources for those who are experiencing energy insecurity. One of the biggest ones here in the state is the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program, or LIHEAP. LIHEAP applications actually open up. The next cycle of applications opens up on September 1st, so in a couple days. So right after that state evictions moratorium expires, LIHEAP applications open up. LIHEAP is on a first come, first served basis and is administered based on income eligibility requirements, so income-based eligibility requirements. Specifically to be eligible for LIHEAP, which is this one-time payment basically to help you with utilities, be that utilities arrearages, past due utilities bills or present utilities bills. It helps you with those. And the eligibility requirement is that you have to be below 200% of the federal non-farm poverty level. So for example, one person in 2021, 200% of that federal poverty level is $25,760. So if you're a single person and you make less than $25K a year, you're probably, you're good. You can apply for LIHEAP. For a household of 4, that's $53,000. So if you're a family of 4, a household 4, experiencing difficulties with your electrical bill or your utilities, and you make less than $53,000 as a household, you would be eligible for LIHEAP. So a lot of people would be eligible for this. In addition to LIHEAP, there's another program which is called PIP, or the Percentage of Income Payment Plan. And essentially, the eligibility requirements are the same as LIHEAP, but instead of them giving you a one-time cash payment, they would set up a payment plan between you and your utility provider for you to pay it back. So those are both 2 assistance programs available for folks here in the state. In addition to that, it's not so much a immediate piece of assistance. It's not immediate assistance, but in the long term, switching over on the pricing schedule that you use to purchase electricity could cut down on electrical bills. So down here, we are served by Ameren. That's our utility. And Ameren has a pricing program called Power Smart Pricing, which allows you to pay the market rate for electricity instead of their fixed flat rate. The market rate is generally lower And if you're able to shift around your usage to the times of day where electricity is the lowest, you could see substantial savings. And then in addition to programs provided by the utility, there are also programs to enjoy some of the economic benefits of renewables. And again, it's not really an immediate fix. It's not something that I would go to right away if I were having problems with the utility bill, but thinking long-term for ways you could reduce the financial burden of energy expenses on your home, participating in community solar programs such as Solarize Southern Illinois, or the program administered by my organization, Elevate, which is Illinois Solar for All, or ILSPA. Both of those are community solar programs, which essentially allow you to subscribe to a solar development that is away from your house, so you can have a credit applied to your bill instead of installing solar yourself directly. But that would also cut down on energy expenses long-term. Awesome. I just saw in the chat that the state moratorium was extended as of this afternoon to September 18th. So that is great news. I'm just hearing about that. So the state moratorium is extended. But that's about all I have. I will go ahead and kick it back to Dr. Flowers and Jennifer. And if there are any questions from the segment I just did, we'll have a Q&A in a little bit. So thank you again, and I look forward to answering any questions.
Okay, great. Our next speaker is Brigitta Mac-Rizzo, the Executive Director of the Jackson County Housing Authority.
Thank you, Jennifer. And good evening to the panelists and attendees. I am going to speak this evening from the Jackson County Housing Authority perspective. And I would like to also follow the lead of my previous panelist and add a couple of more resources for attendees, where the Jackson County Housing Authority is accepting applications for housing. If we do not take into account that you have had evictions and or owe previous landlords, you just cannot owe another public housing authority. I am encouraging tenants to work with landlords and for landlords to work with their tenants during this eviction moratorium. It's much more costly to evict tenants than people realize. When the tenant is able to continue communications with their landlords, there's hope that they can stay housed. And the purpose of this eviction moratorium is to hopefully get resources to tenants so that they can continue to stay housed. Public housing we're currently in the process of taking partial rental payments where you can pay what you can afford to pay at the moment. We're also doing interims to help people to fill out paperwork so that residents can reduce their rental portions based on their income. If their income has been affected by COVID, then they are able to fill out interim packages. Please talk to your property managers and your caseworkers in the compliance department to get the paperwork in. I am asking our compliance department to go back to even March of last year with rent adjustments if a tenant has been affected by COVID and their income has reduced. We are also looking at other avenues. We are trying to get the Illinois Development Housing Association to reconsider taking applications from public housing residents so that they can also tap into the rental assistance program, which they're currently not currently not available to them, but we're doing everything that we can to keep residents housed. Please utilize the resources. Please talk to your property managers. Please talk to your compliance department caseworkers, and please talk to your landlords. Your landlords may be willing to put together repayment agreements if residents are behind, depending on the dollar amounts that they're behind. Put in paperwork for the rental assistance program if you're eligible to put in paperwork for the rental assistance program, so that your landlord can receive that funding. Paper applications can be picked up at 300 North 7th Street in Murfreesboro in the lobby. They can be picked up at our North Marion Street Community Center as well. You can go to our website to apply online for applications. And we have drop boxes at 1425 Old West Main, 300 North 7th Street in Murfreesboro. We have drop boxes there, and North Marion Street in Carbondale, we have a drop box. So if you do get an application, a paper application from us, please feel free to drop it off in any of the drop boxes. You can also email it to us, take photos of it, email it to us. The email address would be compliance@jacksoncountyhousingauthority.org. That is the extent of my presentation.
Great, Brigitta. Thank you so much. That was very helpful information. So our next speaker is Lori Crenshaw Bryant. She is the director of the Students Legal Assistance Office. So we will hear from Lori.
Good evening, everyone. I wear many of the hats. The hat I'm wearing today is actually not my professional one, but as a life member of the Carbondale branch of the NAACP. And so I want to focus actually on the governor's executive orders, with the eviction moratorium. And the goal of all that, you may or may not know, there have been several. The last one, as was told today, was extended. Prior to that, it was expired on August 21st, and the governor signed the new one, 2021-19, effective on August 21st. And as was said, it would expire on its face on the 18th of September. There is some discussion that too may be extended to correlate with the CDC, which will expire on October 3rd. But the purpose of those executive orders was to protect tenants who submit a signed declaration form from being evicted or removed from the residence during this time period up until September. As was said earlier, there's concerns is that once the moratorium is terminated, then there's going to be a host of evictions. So let's talk about these executive orders, okay? And I'm going to go in, not in order of it in, but section 4, I want to talk about that first. And that section of the order that was 2021-13, that was amended by 2021-14, extended by 2021-15, and the latest 2021-19. But that says that section 4 ceased enforcement of eviction orders, which states, and I read, all state, county, and local law enforcement officers in the state of Illinois are instructed to cease enforcement of orders of eviction for the residential premises entered against a covered person. Remember that word, we're going to come back and talk about covered persons or non-covered person, unless, and that's an exception I think William talked about, is that person has been found to pose a direct threat, to the health and safety of other tenants or an immediate and severe risk of property. And so what's a covered person? Well, I'm glad you asked. A covered person means a tenant, a leasee, a subleasee, or a resident of a residential property who provides to their landlord, the owner or residential property, or other person or entity with a legal right to pursue an eviction or possessory action, a declaration, let's remember that word, under penalty of perjury. And in that declaration, the covered person must state, one, that they expected to earn no more than $99,000 the calendar year of 2020, unless there's a joint filing, then it's $198,000. Or they were not required to report any income in the year 2019, or they received stimulus economic impact payment, which is money during the CARES Act. And so that's the first. The second required, they have to show that they are unable to make their rent or housing payment due to COVID-related hardship. So that's included, limited, but not limited to a substantial loss of income, loss of hours at work or wages. So anything you can show that you've been impacted by this pandemic. The third requirement is that you actually, even though you're impacted, you are trying your best effort to make some type of partial payment. However, you have to take into account your non-desk expenses. And so what those include is that, you know, do I pay rent or eat food? No, you don't have to make that choice. They were saying if your money is going to food, you're impacted. So you can do that, or utilities, phone, any of those things that are essential to your hair and care, they actually take that into account when you're trying to show you use your best effort to make those partial payments. And the fourth requirement is that if you are evicted, you will become homeless. And if you don't, or that you'll be forced to move in with other people, so now you're in a closed quarter. And so once again, you're impacted by it. If you meet those four requirements, then you consider a covered person, and that's your declaration. So what's a non-covered person? Well, a non-covered person is any tenant who does not provide that declaration, okay? And those non-covered persons may be evicted during the pandemic. So the declaration is actually for both parties, both for the tenant and the landlord. Matter of fact, and you can get, the CDC has a form, the state of Illinois also has a form, and you can get the form from the Illinois Housing Development Authority, their webpage. You can download their form. Also, you get it from the Illinois Supreme Court page. And what it requires is that each landlord must provide each tenant with a declaration at least 5 days prior to the commencement of any residential eviction proceedings. And that's including, but not limited to, that 5-day notice of eviction. So they have to give that. The landlord does not give that, the landlord is in violation of the order. And it has to be served properly. And there's 4 ways of making service, okay? And therefore you can, the landlord could personally serve the tenant. The landlord can serve someone in that residence 13 years or older, or the landlord can send it by certified mail, or and only if the place is vacant can they post. If that resident is not vacant, posting of notice is not proper in the state of Illinois. Now under the 2019, on the newest one, there was a caveat. So, I mean, not a caveat, there's an amendment. And there was some discussion of whether or not people are being truthful in doing the declaration. Even when you do that, it's under penalty of perjury. So that's a sentence of, that's a criminal offense. But now under the new order, it actually says that, I'm just going to read it. Nothing in this executive order shall preclude a person or entity with a legal right to pursue an eviction or possessory action from challenging the truthfulness of a tenant's leases, subleases, or resident declaration in court. So it's not automatic. If somebody believes that you're not being truthful, they can challenge that in court. In addition to what the executive, the governor have done, the Illinois Supreme Court also realized that there may be a flood of evictions being filed once this moratorium is uplifted. And so what the Illinois Supreme Court did is that effective August 1, that the moratorium is no longer permitted the filing of petitions. Before the Supreme Court spoke, you can even file. Now you can file. But what they did, they're doing it a stay. You can say it's a triage, those in the medical field. So that means from August 1 to August 31st, even if you file, there'll be no actions on those. And what the Supreme Court wants to do at that time is make sure that residents, tenants are aware of anti-rental assistance programs. As you may be aware, there was one by the Illinois Housing Development Authority, and unfortunately that expired on July 18th. And what it did, it allowed landlords to file first and then get their tenants. And what this is money from the federal government, and it was up to $25,000 a person. So what it would have covered 12 months of back rent and 3 months of current rent, forward rent. And unfortunately, that money was given to the states implemented, and it appears that some people did not take advantage of that. And it could be a plethora of reasons. One is whether or not they were aware of it. How was this information disseminated? Two, even if they're aware, were they able to read and understand it? And three, did they have the capacity, the technological resources to actually complete the forms? Some people may missed out, but that was an opportunity. And so now there are some other resources available, and what the Illinois Supreme Court want the judges to look at. Okay, how can we match up the landlord and the tenant with some resources so that we can prevent all these expected evictions? However, so there's a stay. However, there's an exception to that. Once again, the same way with evictions. If the person posed a direct threat to the health, safety, or up to other tenants, or an immediate severe risk to property, they're exempt. But landlords can also ask for exempt from that. And the Supreme Court actually has a form entitled plaintiff, that will be the landlord in most cases, certification for exemption from the 30-day stay. And what the landlord has to show by signing this is, and it's under perjury, same as the declaration for the tenants, is that one, I gave it to the tenant, the declaration, they did not return it. Or two, they did not return it showing that they were a covered person. And they can ask the court to exempt them from that 30-day stay and proceed with the evictions. There was some talk about the CDC. As we know, the CDC extended theirs. Okay, I saw a comment. I'm looking at private landlord tenant. That's my specialty. I don't know about public housing. So I guess somebody would address that issue momentarily. The CDC, as you know, theirs expired before the state of Illinois. And as you know, the president went back, and that was a conversation. So they extended theirs to October 3rd, 2021. But there was a difference between this order and the previous order. And that was, it was only in area, it was geographically targeted. So area they experienced substantial and high levels, then they were covered. So there was concern when Illinois was going to expire on August 21st, and we had yet to hear from the governor. Then Illinois would have fell back, tenants would have fell on the CDC because we were on that high area. Look at the CDC, they had a map. And if you looked at the state of Illinois, if you looked at Southern Illinois, because it was, if you were in red, you are a targeted area. And Illinois, Southern, like we were dipped in red paint. So even if the governor had not extended Illinois, we would have felt on the CDC, but because it's not necessary right now because we're still again until September. The question is, if the governor does not extend that into September, then, the CDC is still good until October 3rd. And so the last thing I want to leave you with is there are some rental assistance available. Remember, I told you like the Supreme Court is going to try to see what's out there. So I did look in the Illinois Department of Human Services. Actually have some rental assistance, and those who are in Southern Illinois, I looked at the counties of Jackson, Williamson, Union, Franklin, Randolph, Alexander, Pulaski, and Perry. You can actually contact their provider. And this, for those areas, are Illinois Migrant Council, and that number is area code 815-995-0300. And they're located in Crystal Lake, Illinois. I thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Lori. That was extremely helpful. I'm sure we can all agree. So I just want to let everyone know that these resources will be compiled and we will be putting them on the Carbondale Public Library's website. Our next speaker this evening is Carmelita Cahill, the Executive Director of the Carbondale Warming Center.
Sorry about that. Thank you. I'm going to start mine with the racial disparity that goes along with evictions. Because as we enter into this pending crisis on evictions, and it is a pending crisis, with all of the information and the resources that are out there, there are still, like Ms. Bryant said, people that aren't able to access that and or understand how to accommodate that. And a lot of times these are the same homes that are facing problems in getting housing to begin with. The eviction rate in Black communities is 4 times higher than it is in non-Black communities. And then once you have that eviction on your record, it's even harder to find housing, not just housing, but adequate housing, safe housing, maybe in a good neighborhood, maybe someplace safe for your children to go to school. And this can set a lot of people back when many low-income people are paying more than half of their income for their housing. If they're evicted, now they're faced with that eviction. They're faced with applying for new housing. So even at a minimum, in our area of about $300 for a small apartment a month, you're still looking at $900 to move in. And so it creates a bigger problem. What I generally deal with on a day-to-day basis is the result of an eviction, the result of being asked to leave a home. And that it not only affects the person as far as where they live, it affects them in many ways that people don't consider. If you're a parent and you're not able to provide a roof for your child, a place for your child to grow and thrive, you feel like a failure. Even if you're a single individual, you feel like a failure. And a lot of the people that we work with are already facing mental health issues. So these things tend to exacerbate it. A lot of the people that I work with and the guests that we serve aren't able to get through the 20 pages of the CDC declaration, aren't able to follow the step-by-step process to declare themselves ineligible for eviction. So it's a very frightening situation out there. And in the same right, a lot of these same people, when they hear something to the effect of, oh, an eviction moratorium means I don't have to pay my rent, even if they're able to. And it's a lack of understanding at times. And that creates some really serious issues for people, along with a 4 times as high eviction rate for the Black community. We also have an income disparity. You know, you're already paying half your income for rent, and you're 35% behind your counterparts. And that it creates an income catastrophe for many people. And it's a hard thing to come back from. And it makes it very difficult for them to move forward. And again, we deal with that end result and solution. I just left about an hour ago our board meeting for the Carbondale Warming Center. We're fielding about 88 calls per day. And these calls are coming from all of the southern 17 counties, as far up as Madison County, Peoria. All of those areas are affecting, and they don't have places for people to go. This is scary. It's scary for us when I have 37 guests in the warming center right now. And you look at September 18th is coming quickly. And we're getting calls every day, all day. We enact resources. We have them right there by the phone. All of the resources that have been mentioned, we're sharing with people as quickly as we can. Unfortunately, we'd love to invite them into the building and help them process through those resources, but COVID doesn't allow us to do that right now. So we offer as much guidance as we can over the phone with them. One of the things that's concerning about that is, we've been stabilizing some of our mental health people that are in our community, and it's difficult. And even financing to keep our doors open is difficult. So if anybody does want to donate, you can hit our warming center website at cwccentered.org, hit the donate now button, because we're worried about our finances, but we're also worried about what we're going to do next month. We have a 3-story building. How can we make other aspects of that viable to house families? Because these aren't just the homeless that people see every day on the corner by Aldi's. These are mothers, fathers, children that are going to be in a situation, whether they've been affected by the same things of not being able to process that information that's there. And that information is complicated. I have degrees and it's still complicated. And following those directions can be very difficult for people, and especially when they're in a mode of survival. And you take that on top of schools just started, our numbers are rising, congregate living environments are getting swept by COVID again. And it's a very, very scary situation. We've taken that situation and we've put in place policies and procedures to keep COVID at bay at the warming center. However, eventually more than but we also want to be prepared to take in as many people that need us as quickly as possible and help process them through the results of this and then on to a better future, hopefully. We're looking forward to whatever we can do to stay going to do that. But a lot of the folks are already coming from a 35% decrease of income just based on their race, half of their income in rent. And if you're paying half of your income in rent, as it showed when school went online last year, a lot of these homes, for me, I've had internet since it became an in-home thing. I'm a techie kind of person. That's what I like. But a lot of these homes don't have that. It's something I noticed when I moved here. I walked into my brother's house. Hey, what's your Wi-Fi password? Huh? We don't have Wi-Fi. They don't have that technology, the access to it, and then the knowledge on how to use it effectively to get what they need. And whatever we can do to try and bring that forward, we're always available at the Warming Center 24 hours a day. We'll be on the phone with you. We'll walk you through it. We'll get you to where you need to be, to the resources that you need to have, and help you access those the best way that we can. I mean, heck, if we need to take a laptop outside and meet with you at a picnic table with masks on, we'll do that. But generally, we're a good source of information to come check us out with and see how we can help other people. That's the end of mine.
Great. Thank you so much, Carmelita. That was really helpful. And some of those statistics are really frightening. And I hope everyone goes and donates to the Warming Center. And I appreciate you offering to help people with those types of of situations and even doing the paperwork. So now we're at the point where we can go ahead and see if there's any questions from the audience. I think there are a few that we have here, and we can go ahead and start a little bit of a discussion. I actually did have a question just kind of based upon the information that you were just sharing. Are there places where people can go to have like just to help them process these types of forms, just to get all this information? Like, is there any sort of government agency or anything like that? Or is it something that, you know, we at the library need to, well, that's kind of what we're doing, is trying to learn more about how to help people. So if anybody could speak to that.
The first place I would recommend would be the library, because it is an easy access to the internet, to the computers, and to some folks with, oh, I froze up, I'm sorry. The first place I would recommend would be the library. It's easy access, computers, and people that are willing to help them access the information that they need to access. Secondary, like I said, call the Warming Center. Maybe some of the other agencies in town would be willing to do the same thing. We all do kind of have an outreach kind of mentality to help people, because, you know, granted, we're there to take people in, but we'd like to be put out of business. So, I mean, that would be the goal. The goal at this point is, I think, for all of the agencies, is to do anything and everything that they can to help people maintain the housing that they have.
And also, Jennifer, if I may, Land and Lincoln Legal Aid actually definitely are assisting with eviction. So their eviction hotline is area code 855-601-9474. They're open Monday through Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, dealing with those issues. And so what I will do, why don't I just put that in the chat so you can share if you wish.
No problem. Yes, and like I said before, I am going to go through the chat and take all of these resources out, and we will put them on the Carbondale Public Library's website probably tomorrow. So if anybody is interested in finding these resources all at once, you will be able to find them there. So let's go ahead and see what other questions do we have. Okay, where do you go or whom do you contact if you cannot pay your utilities? So it looks like this one was for William.
Yes, sorry, I had a tough time unmuting my mic there. So yeah, the first place you'd want to go is your local community action agency. So I believe the CAA, or Community Action Agency, for Jackson County is the Crosswalk Community Action Agency. I know they have an office in West Frankfort, and I think they have an office in Murfreesboro, but don't quote me on that. If you can't go into their physical office, you can also call their number. Another resource or immediate number you can call is Elevate's hotline, and they'll probably redirect you to myself or one of my other colleagues in Southern or Central Illinois. And that hotline, and I'll put this in the chat as well, that hotline is 883-204-1992. I am typing it as I read it. But yeah, on that hotline, if you had a specific question, hey, I'm in this town, this county, who do I need to call to get LIHEAP or to get on the percentage of income payment plan or something like that? You know, you can call that and somebody would be able to walk you through the process of applying there. But yeah, that would be the first step. A lot of those immediate relief programs are administered through the community action agencies. Although sometimes they'll have things you'd have to fill out, which is where someone from Elevate could help you with the process of filling that out.
Great, thank you so much. And again, if people are watching this on Facebook or YouTube, again, if you're not able to access the chat in the Zoom, it will be on the Carbondale Public Library's website. Okay, so here's another question. Can people in public housing apply for rental assistance that was appropriated by the feds? Might be Brigitta.
To my knowledge, the feds have stated that public housing residents can apply. Illinois has elected to put us on hold. So they're not approving applications, they're accepting applications up to the extent that they don't approve them. I'm just trying to work on getting them to allow our residents to be part of that program.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. What happens to teens who are homeless and who do not live with parents? Can Renters Assistance Program help kids? Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
So I thought the Renters Assistance Program, at least the emergency rental assistance program, was for people that were already in a lease agreement and owed a landlord and had not paid rent up to a certain period of time. So that emergency rental assistance program was paying rent for the previous 9 to 12 months and then ahead 3 months. But you would have to already be in a lease agreement. I'm not sure about any other rental assistance programs. Maybe some of the other panelists can speak to that.
Does anybody else have any of other rental assistance programs that they're aware of?
Not necessarily rental assistance, but I believe that to fill out for the eviction moratorium form, I believe the requirements do not mention age, only income and, you know, presumably being in a lease, right? Presumably owing somebody rent. So I think at least to be covered by the moratorium, you don't have to be a certain age. And I would imagine most rental assistance things would be the same, that it would just be a case where you had to have a lease. As long as you had a lease, you would be good.
On that, for teenagers and young adults, 18 to 23-year-olds, there is the Night Shield, and they have a young adult shelter and transitional housing program. I do know that they have helped some, I know we have referred some young adults there, and they've assisted them with like first and last months and help in moving in and other help as they're growing into having their own place. So I think there might just be some like maybe smaller agencies, maybe specifically for that age group. But I don't, and like William said, I think, you know, just for the moratorium, it doesn't necessarily go by age, but if you have a lease and the income.
Okay, great. Thank you. We had a comment earlier. It says IHDA did not allow public housing or housing choice voucher tenants to apply for assistance. Brigitta, do you have any information on that?
That's true. It's similar to the question that was asked earlier that I responded to. Again, I am trying to convince them to think otherwise about that decision and allow them to have access to those funds. The premise is that if you're receiving public housing or in public housing and or on the Section 8 program, that you're already subsidized. But what people don't realize is that 30% of the income that you pay towards your rental is not subsidized. That money comes out of your pocket. And so, yes, I'm going to continue to work on that. Is the best I can do. But at the moment, they are not approving applications for public housing or Section 8 tenants.
Okay, thank you so much for clarifying that and for working to try to change it. We have a question here. On September 4th, 2021, unemployment benefits will end. If people use these benefits to pay rent, how will they now pay rent. So it sounds like that's going to be a problem. Does anybody have any thoughts about that?
When did it say that the benefits ran out?
It says September 4th, 2021.
September 4th? Yeah, so the CDC moratorium lasts until October. So, I mean, it's not an answer of how you can pay rent if the benefits run out, but I would just apply for the covered person status under the moratorium, because, you know, you would be able to demonstrate, because you've been paying rent, that you've been making efforts to pay rent. And then at least for a period of time when you're after the benefits run out, you would then be, you know, covered from evictions if you applied and were deemed a covered person. I don't know if Lori could maybe speak more to how good that advice is. But yeah, that seems to be what I would recommend in that case.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Okay, so when you say that the unemployment benefits end, is it just the additional funds that end, or you don't mean unemployment benefits end?
Yeah, I don't know. It was in the chat, so it wasn't, I'm not even sure of the precise accuracy of that. I was, I guess, wondering if any of you all had any more information, but
Okay.
I think it probably meant the additional benefits that people have been getting, right? Not the just regular unemployment.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and ask another question here. Who will keep a record of the increase in evictions?
The studies that I looked at for the information that I brought was over 39 states, and it was self-reported by the courts in the counties. So depending on how they want their evictions to be perceived, I think it's gonna, I don't know if we'll ever actually have an accurate number. Because I think that there's going to be actual legal evictions, and we've seen this also where landlords, and nothing against any landlords by any means, they have to make their money too, but some of them are not good, and they have made life miserable for their tenants to the point where they feared for their items, for their personal safety and everything else, and they got the people out without having to go through paperwork and do all of that. So I don't think that, just like with homelessness, we're never going to have an actual count, because you can be homeless and living on top of your family in public housing, and then everybody's kicked out. But just like that, we're not going to have an accurate account on these evictions, because I can tell you evictions for non-payment have been occurring all through COVID. At one point in another county, they actually hired somebody to go and act like sheriffs to put somebody out, while it was absolutely illegal. So we're never going to have an accurate count on, we're going to see an increase across the board in social services, in people applying for public housing, in people applying for aid to avoid the eviction, but we're never really going to know exactly how many people will be displaced by not being able to pay their rent during a financially stressful pandemic. We'll never know. We can only estimate.
So I would only add to that, that sometimes when residents get the eviction paperwork, they leave because they do not want the eviction on their record. So they feel that if they just leave and owe the balance, that they don't have to go through the court system and they can possibly try to lease up somewhere else. So no, I tend to agree. We will not know the full number.
I actually had a question about that. So you hear a lot about the evictions, but is it similar with foreclosures? Is that also a problem that's going to be happening at the same time?
It is. I think with foreclosures, you have some other options. Generally, if you've had the capability to purchase a home, you've done some financial planning, you're in a financial situation where you have taken on, the responsibility of a mortgage. So you may have a little bit of savings, you may have some other things that you can dispose of. One of the things that I say to our guests when they say, you don't care, you're going home tonight. And I tell them like 99.9% of the Americans are a month of paychecks away from being right here. And it may take some a little longer, you could sell a car, you could, dispose of some things, take out of your 401k, all of these things that people that may have a mortgage and that are set up with that financially to even get a mortgage, that they probably already have in place. So they may be able to bring themselves out of it or get themselves to a point where maybe it's a higher payment in the future, or it may take longer. For people that are just being evicted, they're starting from behind already. And people with a mortgage, they're going to go through that too. Unfortunately, it's some of the same situations. They may not have the time. They may be working 3 or 4 jobs just to maintain what they got. And they may not have the time to go through the paperwork, seek the help, and get that help. Or they may let the internet go. You might let all the other fun things that you have, along with having a house go, to try and make that mortgage payment. So it's difficult, but there are people affected definitely that are going to lose their dream of the home that they purchased because of this.
Thank you. Carmelita, this one is actually for you. Does the warming center take in teens?
You have to be at least 18 years of age to be at the warming center or accompanied by an adult. If you're not 18, because we do, call and make sure you don't have any warrants, more than likely somebody's looking for you. Or we can get you connected with other agencies that can assist in your age group. For our younger adults, I touched on the Night Shield. They opened their homeless shelter for youths 18 to 23 in February of this year. And they also have their transitional housing program. So when we have people in that age group, we try to get them, to the appropriate resource for help. They might be with us for a week until there's an opening there, and then we get them there to get the help that's more related to their age and their situation.
Great, thank you. We actually have a comment in the chat. The new IDHS rent relief through the Illinois Migrant Council can cover 3 months of future rent. That may be a short-term answer to rent issues after unemployment ends. So that kind of helps answer one of the questions from earlier. And she did clarify that it is the pandemic unemployment benefits that will end, that she was asking about with the end of the unemployment benefits. So yeah, we'll definitely put the information to contact the Illinois Migrant Council on our website. This is kind of related. Will the end of unemployment this September throw more people to the street? I think. Anybody?
I think it will exacerbate the problem. That's been a common thread through this whole pandemic, right? Has been policy protections or a lack of policy protections exacerbating already existing problems. And, homelessness and high levels of eviction and housing precarity was already a serious issue before the pandemic. And as protections expire, I think that the fewer resources are there, the more evictions we'll see.
William, I have to say I agree with you. Even prior to the pandemic becoming as rampant as it has in the US, when we opened in 2019, by our 3rd week, we were averaging 40 people per night. And that was just people needing a place to sleep at night, inside, where it's warm, and that they could be safe. And that's pre-pandemic. We're still averaging the same amount. And that's a very scary prospect because we're averaging the same amount and at times more because we also have a place where those without a home or someplace safely to ride out of quarantine that have tested positive for COVID can be also. So it is a very, very scary prospect for the guests that we serve and what the future looks like for them. When the warming center went 24 hours at the start of the pandemic, I give all respect to my board because that was a unanimous decision. Because here was the issue. You have a shelter in place order. You have a disease that can be curbed by washing your hands. And then you have 40 some people, and that's just here in Carbondale, right? That wouldn't have access to that. You can't get into a restaurant bathroom. You can't go in places. You can't even go inside of a building and hang out while it rained. So looking at this and looking at the future and what this looks like, it is absolutely frightening. I work a lot of hours all week, as we all do, and I just see that increasing because as these safety nets start to dissipate one by one, it's going to get worse.
Well, thank you, Carmelita. That's very sobering thought. But it's best to be informed about the truth of the situation, and appreciate your honesty about it. I just wonder, I don't think we have any other questions. If anybody in the audience has a question, please go ahead and quickly put it in the chat or the Q&A. Do you all have any other kind of final comments to help us wrap up this evening?
The only thing I'll say is, again, if you're experiencing any kind of difficulty with rent, I would reach out to one of those rental relief providers that we provide in the chat. Additionally, if you have utility arrearages or are experiencing difficulty paying your utility bill, please reach out to your local community action agency, Crosswalk for folks here in Jackson, Waddy for folks over in Saline, kind of that area. And also, feel free to reach out to the Elevate hotline if you would like help navigating any other resources to lower your bill. And that'll be my closing comment for the evening.
Thank you. Does anybody else have a closing comment, remark, or?
If you find yourself in a situation and you need help and you don't have any place to go, or you have questions about what's going on with it, feel free to give us a call at the Warming Center or stop by. We're at 608 East College Street here in Carbondale, and we can be reached at 314-312-2539, or you can send us a message on our website, cwcentered.org.
Thank you so much for that information. And the Carbondale Public Library's website is carbondalepubliclibrary.org. And after I get all of this information together, I will be posting it on our homepage. So it will be a good place to go to get kind of all this information at once, all these different links. And if people ever need to use a computer, they can come into the library and use a computer. We can help as much as we can with the actual filling out of the forms. I do an open computer help on Wednesdays from 9:30 until 1 o'clock. So you can always refer people to us during that time as well, because we help with basically anything.
And then, sorry.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to reiterate that the Carbondale NAACP has partnered with the Land of Lincoln, and they do have an eviction hotline at 877-342-7891.
Great. Thank you so much. I did see that. That's wonderful. The library is also doing a lawyer in the library program the last Friday of every month. from noon until 3 p.m. It's first come, first serve. So if people have questions with basically anything that, there's not a specific topic that it has to be about. So you can feel free to come in for that. But I just want to say thank you so much to the panelists. You all were so helpful and gave so much good information. I want to thank the community partners who took part in this event. And thank you to everyone who attended. We really appreciate it. And we hope that this was helpful for you. So you all have a wonderful night. Thank you.